you've been watching this World Cup closely, you've probably noticed one name appearing again and again: Tala Rangel. What started as a promising tournament has become something far more significant. He isn't just delivering standout performances, he is changing expectations with every match. The frightening part for every opponent is that he looks completely comfortable on football's biggest stage, and history may only be beginning.
Pérez juega con Jorge Díaz Price que le pega! Andy Sánchez!
When Mexico arrived at the World Cup, the conversation sounded familiar. People debated the attack, questioned the midfield, and wondered whether the team had enough quality to compete with football's biggest nations. Very few conversations centered on the goalkeeper because most assumed that position would quietly do its job without becoming the headline. Then, Raúl Tala Rangel stepped onto the pitch, and within a matter of days, every prediction started falling apart. By the end of Mexico's first 4 matches, something extraordinary had happened. South Africa could not score against him. South Korea could not score against him. Czechia searched for a breakthrough and never found one. Ecuador threw everything they had at Mexico's goal and still walked away frustrated. 4 opponents had 90 minutes each to solve the same puzzle, and every one of them left with the exact same answer: nothing. There is something fascinating about the way football treats goalkeepers. A striker can miss 3 chances and still become the hero by scoring the 4th. A goalkeeper spends an entire match doing everything right, yet one mistake can erase 90 minutes of brilliance in a heartbeat. That makes tournaments like the World Cup especially unforgiving, because every save carries the weight of an entire nation. That is why Tala's opening run felt so unusual. It was not simply the clean sheets, it was the calmness. He never looked like someone borrowing the spotlight for a few lucky matches. He looked like someone who had quietly decided the pressure belonged to everyone else. The numbers only reinforced what millions of viewers were already seeing with their own eyes. He led the tournament in goals prevented, showing that he was stopping chances many goalkeepers would be expected to concede. His distribution became another weapon for Javier Aguirre's side, because his long passing repeatedly turned defensive situations into attacks. Modern football asked goalkeepers to think like playmakers, and Tala embraced that responsibility without making it look complicated. Watching him, you almost forgot this was his first World Cup. Tala carried himself like somebody who had already survived situations far more intimidating than 90,000 people watching from the stands. Most professional athletes have a childhood story about falling in love with their sport, a ball under the Christmas tree, a father who played, a backyard where dreams got built one afternoon at a time. Rangel's childhood does not read like that. And honestly, that is exactly why it matters. His parents separated when he was very young, and the responsibility of raising him fell mostly to his grandmother. Money was not something that arrived easily in that household. So as a child, before he was a goalkeeper, before he was anything close to an athlete, Rangel was already working. He worked in a brick factory. He worked in a bakery. He delivered meat around the neighborhood. He washed cars for spare change. He sold coconuts and ice pops on the street just to bring something home. Think about that for a moment. While other kids his age were being driven to football academies by parents chasing a dream, this kid was standing in front of a hot oven making bread or hauling bricks that were heavier than he was, because the family needed the money more than he needed a childhood. His coaches noticed something in him that had nothing to do with his hands or his reflexes. They noticed discipline. They noticed a kid who showed up on time, who listened, who carried himself like someone twice his age. That is not a coincidence. When you grow up with real responsibility that young, you either fold under it or it builds something inside you that never leaves. In Rangel's case, it built the exact temperament a goalkeeper needs. Someone who does not panic when the entire stadium is screaming and the ball is flying at his face. His grandmother never stopped believing in him, even when there was no reason yet to believe in anything. And that belief is about to answer a phone call that changes everything. Before Rangel was a goalkeeper, he was not even sure what position he belonged in. He started out playing in Ciudad Guzman, trying different roles the way most kids do before their bodies decide for them. What his early coaches kept noticing was his height, his coordination, and a strange comfort with the ball at his feet that most young goalkeepers simply do not have. That detail matters more than people realize. A lot of goalkeepers are converted defenders who learn to catch. Rangel was closer to a converted outfield player who learned to guard the net, which is exactly why his distribution looks so different from a traditional keeper. He is not just stopping the ball, he is starting attacks with it. Several clubs showed interest, including Atlas, which, for anyone who knows Mexican football, is not a small rivalry to walk away from. But the story everyone keeps coming back to is the phone call. Chivas called the house looking for him, and it was his grandmother who picked up the phone. The same woman who raised him while he sold ice pops on the street was the one who answered the call that would eventually put him on the biggest stage in football. He joined Guadalajara's academy and started building the foundation that would define his entire career. He learned modern distribution. He learned to read the game the way a sweeper keeper needs to. A loan spell sharpened him further before he ever set foot in a first-team match. You cannot script a detail like that phone call. The woman who fed him became the woman who unknowingly answered his future. But before any of that future arrived, there was a collision on a football pitch that almost took it all away. Rangel made his Liga MX debut in October of 2023. It should have been the beginning of a clean, uninterrupted rise. Instead, shortly after that debut, he suffered a facial fracture in a collision during a match. His season ended early, and for a young goalkeeper trying to prove he belonged, that kind of injury does not just hurt physically, it hurts your timing, it hurts your confidence. It gives every doubter in the room a reason to say, maybe he was not ready after all. He came back anyway. He regained his starting spot and started stringing together clean sheets against some of the biggest clubs in the league, including America, Monterrey, and Toluca. He earned Player of the Match honors in matches that mattered, the kind of recognition that quietly rebuilds a reputation one performance at a time. Here is the part of his story that most people overlook completely. Rangel never played for Mexico at the youth level. Not once. His first call-up to the national team came directly to the senior squad, which almost never happens for a goalkeeper in this footballing culture. And his international debut was not a gentle welcome either. Mexico lost 4-0 against Uruguay, a scoreline that would make most young players question whether they were cut out for this level at all. A lot of careers quietly end right there, in a bruising defeat that never makes the highlight reels but somehow decides everything. Rangel did not let that scoreline define him. He kept working, kept improving, kept showing up, and that stubbornness is exactly what put him in position for the moment that would eventually make the entire football world say his name. So what actually makes him this good? It is not one single thing, and that is what makes him dangerous. His shot stopping relies on reflexes and positioning that let him get to balls other keepers simply do not reach in time. But the real separator is his distribution. Remember, this is a kid who almost became an outfielder. That shows up every single time he receives a back pass under pressure. And instead of blindly clearing it, he finds a teammate 30 yards away with pinpoint accuracy. That is exactly why Aguirre trusts him. Modern football does not just want a goalkeeper who stops shots. It wants a goalkeeper who starts attacks, who acts like an 11th outfield player when his team has the ball. Rangel commands his penalty area with a calmness that goalkeepers twice his age still struggle to find. His timing coming off his line, his aerial dominance on crosses, all of it points to someone who studied the modern version of this position rather than just inheriting the old one. There is a statistic that explains him better than any highlight reel could. Expected goals prevented measures how many goals a goalkeeper stops that an average keeper would have conceded. Rangel topped that chart at this tournament. That number is not about spectacular diving saves people share online. It is about the quiet, repeated decisions that never trend but always matter. And that quiet excellence is precisely what carried him into history. 4 consecutive clean sheets to open a World Cup career is not just impressive. It is one of the rarest starts any goalkeeper has ever had in the history of this tournament. It is the longest opening clean sheet streak by a Mexican goalkeeper, and it places him among a very small group of goalkeepers worldwide who have ever opened a World Cup with 4 straight shutouts. Mexico has always had a strange, wonderful relationship with its goalkeepers. Jorge Campos, who played in neon-colored jerseys he designed himself. Guillermo Ochoa, who somehow kept getting picked for World Cup after World Cup well into his 40s. Mexican fans do not just respect their goalkeepers, they fall in love with them the way other countries fall in love with strikers. Rangel is stepping into that lineage at exactly the right moment, right as Ochoa's era finally comes to a close. And the goalkeeping legends people are comparing him to internationally, names like Walter Zenga, Peter Shilton, Fabien Barthez, and Iker Casillas, are not comparisons handed out casually in football. Those are the names reserved for goalkeepers who changed how the position gets remembered. European clubs have already taken notice, and that kind of attention rarely fades quietly once it starts. Mexico's run eventually ended against England, and in the immediate aftermath, most of the headlines focused on elimination rather than achievement. But strip away the result of one match, and look at what actually happened here. A goalkeeper nobody outside of Mexico had heard of walked into the biggest tournament on earth and became one of its most talked about performers. His World Cup changed how people see him, how the media covers him, how clubs across Europe are quietly discussing his future. More importantly, it changed what he represents inside his own country. He is not just the next name after Ochoa. He is proof that the hardest beginnings do not automatically write the ending. A kid who once mixed cement and delivered meat around his neighborhood just spent a World Cup refusing to let the ball find the back of his net. Whatever comes next for Raúl Rangel, that beginning is already something no one can take away from him. What do you think about Rangel's rise? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.